Welcome to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, helping military veterans and first responders transform their lives from the bedroom to the boardroom. I am one of your hosts, Lord Vader, or Daniel Faust. Do you love your mask? I'm pretty sure you don't love your mask. Most of us are gonna say no. Most people don't wear this in their home. They don't wear it in their bedroom. They definitely don't wear it in their boardroom. So here's the question I ask. Then why do we Xerox copy it for our kids? And I'm not talking about the physical mask that we've been wearing in COVID. If you've been following us these past couple weeks, we're doing a theme this month is take off your mask. And I'm not talking about the physical mask. I'm talking about the mental, emotional, spiritual, social mask that we put on each and every day to go protect ourselves, but we really find out it's actually hurting ourselves and nobody's receiving love except for this handy dandy mask. So I want to tell you a story about a mask and about my son. My son has just turned 13 today. He is a tall boy. He is 5'4", at least he's tall to me because I'm 5'8". And he went over and started copying me as I got older and he got older. What I realized is that he copies the positive things and the negative things. So for myself, as I go over and I didn't deal with the ranting, the emotional baggage, the brokenness from my past and everything else, I basically had my son Xerox copy my mask. So now that I realize that, and maybe you realize that, because maybe there's moments and times that your son or your daughter or any of your kids start replicating you. They start becoming like you. And what happens is that they will grab the positive things and they will grab the negative things. And what are we more apt to go over and see? The negative things. Because guess what? We didn't take off our mask and be vulnerable and transparent. So they went over and values were caught and not taught. So they grabbed the mask just like you would if you were as a family and you went over and started wearing a mask out in places. Your kids would go over and naturally just grab it and go. Because guess what? Our kids want to be like us because they see it as great examples. Until they turn about 13, pre-COVID, they usually follow us. We want them to follow us in the good examples, but not in the bad. So I need to ask the question with that. How do we rewrite the script? Because here at War Hero to Superhero, we're always trying to help you to go over and transform from War Hero to Superhero. So this is one of the scripts we want to help you go over and rewrite because we don't want you to repeat our mistakes or any other mistakes that you're going over walking into that is not edifying in building you up. If it's not building you up, then there is no point. So we want to help you go rewrite the script. So what we discovered for ourselves, and this is inspired from the book The Cure and Parents by John Lynch. We'll go over and post that at the bottom of the feed and tag John to go over and add to the conversation. Is you first go over and rewrite the script because you got to go know the difference. In this particular episode is you got to know the difference between values and preferences. A lot of times we parent our preferences as values and we go over and do that and not even go and realize it, which can bring that mask being donned on, and we try to take control and not give them what they go over and need. So as your kids go over and develop, the first thing they need to do is understand values. And let's give a definition of values. So Siri gave this definition, and then I'm going to give you my definition. Values is the regard that something is held to deserve the importance, the worth, and usefulness of something. So you're like, what does that mean? It's just words. What it means is that you're going to hold regard to something that you're willing to die for. So as you as parents, when you hold a value, it's something that you're willing to die for. Are you willing to die to love your kids? Yes. Are you willing to go over and die for saving their lives? Yes. Are you willing to go over and die maybe for their education? You put sacrifice in, you're putting emphasis and worth, maybe. But are you going to go over and die for this cup? Are you going to go die for this mask? Are you going to go die for a sweatshirt, or how they go and express themselves? Now, obvious answer is no. But guess what happens? It's usually yes. Like if we go over and tell our kids like what to wear and what to go over and do and what the specific things in that particular regard, we're taking our preferences and putting it as values, and then our kids can't freely express themselves. Have you ever gone over and told your kids to randomly go over and change because it doesn't go over in matches, or gone over and not to do a certain thing because you said so, or whatever it is, and it's not a legitimate reason? Well, they're taking it as value. You might think it is preference, but if you're pushing that agenda every single day, you're going over and value it. A perfect example for me is I used to rant all the time about cleaning. I'm still concerned about it, but I used to rant about it. I used to complain about it. I used to go over into discipline and everything else. And what do my kids think I value? Cleaning. The only reason I value cleaning is because it goes over and gives me peace to go over and be relational. But I put so much value when I entered the door that that's what they thought I valued. So they don't know that I like certain things. They don't know I like certain foods. They don't know that there's certain things about me because I went over and took a preference and updrived it to value. Now, what's the difference between preference and value? A preference is a greater liking for one thing over something else. So if I have a choice of going over and wearing a short sleeve shirt versus a long sleeve shirt, I will wear a short sleeve shirt. That's the difference. But can I wear a long sleeve shirt? Sure. Same thing with foods. If I can go over, and we do this all the time, like in foods, we're like, we could say we love this particular food and we don't like this other food. That's a preference. You're capable of eating both. You're capable of using both. You just have a greater liking to one to another. Minecraft versus Roblox. Some of my kids go over and like Roblox, the majority, and one of them likes Minecraft. Now, are they going to go over and willing to die for it? Maybe, maybe not. So, but my definition is this: is do you like it and your kids don't? If it's that type of thing that you have a certain order, you have a certain system, you have a certain thing, and you go over and you like it and they don't, and you allow it to be okay, that's a preference. If you like it and they don't, and you try to go force that like on them, then you're going over and taking a preference and making it a value. And when we get this backwards, we create a permission-based system that breaks hearts and have our kids don on a mask. Like when my kids go over and I come home, compared to my wife when someone comes home years ago, still little remnants of it, is that they'll go over in fear or in fight, go over and fear and then go pick up the room, or fight, go over and defend it in that particular regard. And they're not doing it out of love. They're doing it out of begrudging compliance. It says, if I do X and I do Y and I do Z, then I go receive love. Well, if my kids went over and hate cleaning and they do it out of begrudging compliance in a permission-based system, their mask is getting love. They're not getting love. They're getting love for what they go over and do. And if I go over and I don't show love when they go over and they do wrong, and I take that away, then I'm going over and creating brokenness in that particular part. Does this resonate with anybody? Because I know it did for me, that they thought I loved them because they went over and cleaned, or they thought I loved them because they did X or Y or Z. And guess what? In some regards, I created a mask. I Xerox copied it on and told them to go over and put it on. And they might have did it out of begrudging compliance, but when they go over and leave, it doesn't stick. That's why you see several times kids that are in churches, or they get out of high school and they go to college and all their values go away. They were such a great kid. They were in church, they were in club, they were in this type of thing. They got to college and then they started drinking, they started smoking, they started doing everything else. Because it wasn't their values. It wasn't their values. It wasn't for them to go over and die for. So they went over and did that stuff. It was a permissions-based system. They valued it because of you, but they didn't value it because they adopted it on. And when they did that, they donned the mask. And we see so many people go over and do that. If you got paid $1 million, would you go over and stay in your job? If you actually got it paid and said yes, that means you value the job. You're willing to be sacrificial. You're willing to die for it. But if you're willing to leave, then you don't value it. You know, there's a job that I do right now with a smiling commander. I love the job, but I value the next opportunity more to go over and serve you guys, and I'm willing to be sacrificial. I'm willing to die for to go over and do that. But we need to do it in the right order. We need to take our values and put it in the right places. We need to put it from the bedroom to the boardroom. Because even if I do that backwards, it messes up. But the point is that if we do this permission-based system that breaks hearts ourselves, and we don't go get this right, we're creating our kids to go over and to don this mask. Now, who wants to go over and wear a mask for the rest of their lives? Hardly no one, because most people do this and everything else, or they don't put it on at all. The thing is we were not meant to don on masks, and masks are only supposed to be a short-term thing. In the military, the longest we wear our mask after it needs to be cleaned and everything else is a couple days, max. And then after that, it needs to be sanitized. Canisters need to be replaced. If it's an infected area, it can be hours. We're not meant to go over and wear it long-term in the military. We're not meant to wear it long-term for this stuff, but we are. And we're definitely not meant to go over and to wear this, especially our kids. Our kids can kind of get used to it and they feel that they kind of need it, but the reality is that it's not serving them a purpose. It's not serving us a purpose. So what do we go over and do? Well, first off, we have to understand this before we go figure out what to do. Is the mask goes over, and as this system goes, the mask receives love, and our kids loses the love they solely need. So it's not their job to go rip off their mask yet, unless they're out of the house, and then they have to go through that. And we highly recommend them go back to last week's podcast and also go over and read the book, The Cure. Highly recommended. Go read John Lynch's book. Now, what to go over and do if we're the parents and we realize that our kids are donning masks because we kind of made a permission-based system for them to don the mask to go and receive love, what to go over and do. So here's some homework. It's not going to be easy. Number one, take time to self-reflect on what you are showing as values compared to preferences. So go back to your dictionary of sorts or take our definitions, whatever it is, and whatever best fits you, because I'm an Oxford fan. I grabbed it real quick out of series. But the long story short is that what are you willing to die for, and what do you just go over and like? That's the basic definitions between values and preferences. What do you go over and willing to die for compared to going over and just go strongly like? Would I be okay if I went over and put a sweater on right now? Yes. Would I like it? Not right now. It's a preference. My preference is to go over and wear short sleeve. But if I'm going to go fight everybody to go over and wear that and get rid of all my clothes and dedicate all my money, that shows that I value the short sleeve over the sweater. Preference is just a strong like. I can tolerate going over and eating spaghetti. I prefer not to eat it, but I can go over and survive on it. So take some time to self-reflect. So you might need to go over and get away. You might need to go over and get a run. You might need to go over and do something productive. Maybe it's going over and taking some time to meditate on it, whatever it is. Take some time to self-reflect the difference between what you show as values compared to preferences. Now here's the next step. Ask your spouse for perspective. You might think that you only prefer something. Like I say, I have a high preference in cleaning. I value it. I put time, I put energy, I put sacrifice in there in that particular regard. So I value it. I'm willing to sacrifice life, breath, time, and those types of things. The same thing for this podcast. I go over and I value it. But the thing is that do I really value it? It's better to go get the perspective of your spouse. Your spouse can go show you great perspective on this. And here's the last step. And this one's going to be the hardest one. Reflection, that's the mental flossing. You go over and do that. Asking your spouse's perspective is like going over and brushing your teeth. This one's like going to the dentist and getting a cleaning. Practice taking off the mask. Here's a perfect example. I used to rant like crazy when I got into the door, everything that was wrong. Everything. Go ask my wife. I used to rant about what was in order, not in order, what was the day, how things were going, schedule, everything else. I was a control freak. Still learning, still growing. How did I start practicing taking off the mask? I had to take some time in prayer and self-reflection that every time before I came home to go over. And once I crossed that threshold, I'm not in the boardroom anymore. I'm in the living room. So I need to go over and pour into their lives just as much as I do in the boardroom, just as much as I do on this podcast and everything else, which is will be airing live on Podopolo soon. So if you want to watch a dynamic interactive podcasting, it will be live soon. But I had to literally go over and at that threshold say, how am I going to respond compared to react? Values, we typically react. Preferences, we usually respond. We got it backwards too. Our values, we still need to learn to go and respond with. So I value cleaning, I value order, value everything else. What's a better way for me to do that? To take it on as a servant attitude, to go over and serve instead of going over and ranting, because it didn't go over and do well. It didn't get more work done. I was just doing more work anyway. So maybe for you, it's biting your tongue. Maybe it's coming back from perspective. Maybe it's changing a discipline. Maybe it's changing how you tactile parenting or not. Maybe it's you and your spouse coming together and making something that you both agree on, because then those values are then family values. And at least you're going out as a unified front, and your kids realize is that was another thing I had to learn, is that when my wife did something that I disagreed with, she's house operations. So I continually say that to our kids. Your mom's house operations. It doesn't matter if I think it's wrong. I'll go back later and then talk and then have a discussion and then go over and say, hey, if this is this, need on board. And then there's a lot of times I have to take my quote unquote preferences, which I put over drive for values, and let them go, and vice versa. So that's an example of practicing taking off the mask. Once you understand the differences, once your spouse gives you perspective, then you can start practicing taking off the mask. This is going to be a start. And we're going to talk more about this tomorrow in different aspects on how to go over and take off the mask. This is just one way to start this process. So that's pretty much about it for today, because this is going to take some time to go over and absorb. And I actually am challenging you guys in this superhero challenge immensely. So whoever is watching, no matter which platform, I'd love you to go hit Facebook, especially either my personal page or my Learn and Live page, which is the parent company for all War Hero Superhero. Is I'd love for you to share a value and a preference on the feed. Now, don't go over and say, this is my value, this is my preference. Just share two things. Share one value and one preference. And people that go over and see this on the feed, I want you to guess which one is which. So you're going to want to put a number 1 and a number 2, and you just put it on there. And if you're going over and seeing this on the feed, you're going to go over, and if you guess and you hit the reply, you're going to put number 1 as value and number 2 is preference, or number 2 is value and number 1 is preference. And that's all you're going to do. So you can start seeing how someone else sees things, because they might see things as differently. You might think that this is you're willing to die for, and someone else says this is only a preference. And you might start seeing that maybe your preference is an overdrive, it as a value, or vice versa. That's something that you truly value. You're taking it only as a preference, and you're kind of taking off the oxygen from yourself. We want to go rip off the mask first, so then we can teach our kids. So that's our challenge for today, is to go over and for you to share a value and a preference on the feed. Just put number 1 and number 2. And then if you're on the feed and you want to take a guess, you put in the reply, just put number 1, value or preference, choose which one, and then number 2, value or preference. Go over and see how people view your values and your preferences in the living room. Keep it in context, in the living room. So values and preferences at home. So I want to thank you guys all for joining, no matter where you're watching, from the Easy Way Wall or Roku, wherever it's at. we love to go over and to help you out. So if you're struggling with taking off the mask, because it's not easy, it's taken me years. So we want to go over and to help you go over and thrive. Yes, you got to wear this outside, but when you're home inside, we want you to be free. And if you're struggling in that particular area, 20 minutes free to every military veteran, first responder, first time going over. Find us on Facebook, find us on the Easy Way wall, find us on Roku, find us wherever you're at. Facebook is the easiest, and you guys can text me through the Facebook. That's where we mainly go connect. And if you really want to take your living room, you want to become that family superhero and take it to the next level, it's only $10 a month, and you go to patreon.com, Thrive Not Survive. You're not ready for family? Go hit the marriage one, $5 a month, or go up it to leadership. Wherever you're not thriving, we want to go over and serve. That's where we built our Patreon. It's built from the bedroom to the boardroom and beyond. So I want to thank you all for joining. We're going to go celebrate my son's 13th birthday by going over and giving love without wearing a mask. I challenge you to take yours off. So I hope you can go over and not just carry it anymore, and for you to go over into just